about this accusation. Let us not make it worse.
Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. The reason why Hong Kong has become an international financial center, well, that cannot be done by staging a few protests, demonstrations, and rallies. Well, that's because we have the rule of law, we have an established mechanism, and also we've been upholding the rule of law and our core values. Well, during the past 19 days, Mr. Deputy, we can see that the Occupy Central movement, which is an unlawful event, and the protesters have been occupying the streets and roads illegally in Admiralty, Causeway Bay, and Mong Kok. In the community, there have been different sayings. Well, some say that the police have used excessive force. They even say that they are colluding with the triads. But then, from what I've seen on the TV screen, there were demonstrators acting in an organized manner, and they tried to charge at the police cordon line, which is the truth. So I think we need to piece together the bits and pieces and the different footages before we can tell. But then during the past fortnight or so, I haven't been able to see any comprehensive footages that would allow the public to see the full picture. Mr. Deputy, with regard to the unlawful Occupy movement, is very different from previous rallies and marches, because in the past, we almost had marches and rallies every week. But then most of the time, the demonstrators would be expressing their views in a very peaceful manner. That's why most of those activities or events had been staged very peacefully. But then for the OCM, it's the 19th day today. Other than occupying or blocking traffic, is seriously affecting the daily life of people. The noise nuisance has disrupted people's sleep, and there has been a lot of inconvenience in terms of the traffic. And for those in the retail sector or catering sector, well, they have lost their business, and as a result, they will lose a lot of earnings. They are living from hand to mouth. That's why if this is allowed to continue, then they will not be able to pay their rents and the wages of their workers. So what will happen next? They can only close down. A couple of days ago, in the main roads of Hong Kong, some of the demonstrators use cement or even drain covers and so on to reinforce their barricades. So these are all organized activities. And if there should be a fire or an emergency situation, emergency vehicles and ambulances would not have been able to enter those roads and streets. So who will suffer? Well, those requiring first aid, emergency rescue will be affected. So we don't want that to happen. We can see that this unlawful OCM, which took place on the 28th of September, well, at the beginning of the movement, most of the demonstrators were students and ordinary citizens, and they were peaceful. But then, for the demonstrators confronting the police cordon line, well, they tried to charge at the cordon line time and again. Some would use their umbrellas to attack the police. Some kicked the policemen with their feet. So should the policemen just be holding on to the cordon line and that's all? Well, Mr. Deputy, when we saw OCM start, the community was very divided, and we could see repeated conflicts between the police and the demonstrators. Some even alleged that the police are colluding with the triads. Is that true? Because Albert Ho said that without evidence, if it's not logical, then please do not make such allegations. All right, if it's groundless, then you should not be spreading the rumor, because that would only wreak havoc in our society. So please be rational. Please tell the truth. Mr. Alan Leong said when he opened this debate, he talked about the causal link. Well, from time to time, I would talk to the Buddhist followers. We also talk about the causal relationship, and we also hope that if we can do good, then we'll be able to have good harvest later. And what's most important is that you must not lie, or else you will not be able to get the good harvest. And hence, that would also affect your ability in getting good harvest. So we will have to first find out who has charged at the police cordon line. For example, on the 28th of September, it was the demonstrators who confronted the police by charging at their cordon line, and as a result, a series of incidents happened. So should we just try to mislead the public? So would that amount to telling lies? We can see that the community is divided, and many people, including lawmakers, they are making use of public opinions to point their fingers at the police in a very lopsided manner, even without any evidence. So that would only disharmonize our society, and that would only mean that the incident cannot end.
Mr. Deputy, from what we can see from the TV, Mongkok is the place where we had the greatest number of conflicts. The occupiers and detractors scuffled, and they relied on the police to separate them at the front. So the police officers have been pushed around by the pro-occupy people and the detractors. One was hit by a stone, and he had to receive 5 stitches in a hospital. And then Mr. Deputy, you and I visited him a few years ago, and we understand that her wife has just given birth last month. Well, if we put ourselves in his shoes, given that his wife is still resting after delivery, he would very much like to spend more time with her, to take care of her. However, he cannot do that. He has caused his wife to worry for him, in particular after his injury by that stone. Mr. Zhang, or Inspector Zhang, has told me that since the outbreak of the Occupy movement, he could only go home or stay home for a few days, for a few hours a day. Some of his colleagues haven't been home for a few days. I'm sure we're all worried. And Inspector Zhang said that, well, as a police officer, he must stand firm and discharge his duty in an impartial and fair manner so as to uphold the rule of law, maintain law and order, and protect the safety of the citizens. The police officers have been verbally insulted by officers day after day. Sometimes they are driven away. And when protesters have confrontations with detractors, will they be blamed for not being there in time, and the police presence is insufficient? So Mr. Abuchen. Well, since Mr. Jeffrey Lam is so touching and moving, can I invoke ROP 17.2 so that more members can come back to listen to him? Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Mr. Deputy, the foundation of democracy is mutual respect, forbearance, and being accommodating. I respect the young people's ideal for democracy. However, the Occupy movement has seriously disrupted the life of Hong Kong people. In a society, there is the freedom of elections. However, people also have the right to use our roads normally to go to work and to do business with freedom. It's only by so doing that we can express our opinions under a democratic system. Taking over roads, charging police cordon lines, or unlawful acts. The police have their inherent duty to maintain order. Hong Kong is among the safest cities in the world because of the good work of our police. The police are here to maintain public order and public safety, and they also have to deal with the high emotions of protesters, and if they're subject to unreasonable criticisms and accusations, then their morale will be dealt a fatal blow, and the society stands to lose ultimately. And therefore, we support the police in discharging their duties conscientiously. We don't want Hong Kong to be further polarized and divided. We want protesters to be restrained, and the organizers of protests, please do not appeal to protesters, to asking them to do unlawful acts. Please do not block the traffic by occupying roads, and please settle this matter reasonably and rationally. I believe the majority of people in Hong Kong would want the Occupy Central movement to be over as soon as possible so that we can restore social order, because most people in Hong Kong love peace and are against the illegal occupation of Central. And we should also grasp this opportunity of electoral reforms. Let's take a big step forward so that our 3.5 million voters can choose their CE by one person, one vote system. Lastly, I hope we can all achieve what we want to do. And I hope Mr. Alan Leong understands that a lot has to be done. We have to continue to tell the truth, to tell the whole story, the whole picture, instead of being economical with the truth and incomplete stories so as to mislead our people. We love peace, and we also want to have prosperity and economic development.
Ms. Starry Lee, Mr. President, the rule of law is well recognized worldwide. The city is very safe. People, when they go out to the street, they don't have to get worried. Now, when we look around the advanced economies in the world, there are not many safe cities, and Hong Kong can be one of the safest cities in the world. The police has a great contribution. We have a good law and order. We have a low crime rate, and that is why we have been able to attract talents and businesses. And the police is a powerful force in maintaining law and order. Today, we are talking about the police's and the government's handling of the public assemblies. Well, before we do that, we have to take a look at the record of their past record. Under the basic law, people do enjoy the freedom of assembly. And since the handover, there have been so many demonstrations. They are of varying sizes. Overall, the demonstrations and processions are in good order. The demonstrators are rational and peaceful and rational, and this is well recognized by the international world. Many members criticized the police for mishandling the demonstrations, and they smeared the police for colluding with the triads. This is unfair and not the whole truth. Unfair accusations. They don't mention that OCM is illegal. They don't mention that the demonstrators are provoking the police. They just said that the demonstrators are peaceful. They didn't mention that the police are self-restrained and they have the responsibility to restore order. So they are speaking part of the truth, and these accusations will further deal a blow to the police's will to enforce the law, and their morale will be hampered. And now, if the LCM continues, more chaos will be created, and those opponents of the OCM may create more clashes and confrontations. And who stands to lose is ultimately the society as a whole. Mr. President, the 28th of September, the founder of the OCM announced that the OCM was kick-started, and on the TV, we saw many footages. Well, what are the reasons behind these demonstrations? I think everybody is subject to his opinion. I want to share Ming Pao's editorial on the 29th of September. This conflict is spinning out of control. It's beyond a lot of people's imagination. People blame the demonstrators for pushing or charging the police, and when there are confrontations, people question whether it is appropriate to use tear gas. Now, the police had fired tear gas. If the Mills barrier could fend off the demonstrators, we believe that the police would not ask the police officers to use pepper spray. Now, if pepper spray works, then there would not be any firing of tear gas. Yesterday, Admiralty Central, Wan Chai, well, a reasonable discretion is an interaction between the police and demonstrators, and among those injured are some police officers. So the police officers had to suffer too. So if we have to take somebody to task, it should be both parties. Some demonstrators are peaceful, but then the OCM's aim is to, through illegal occupation of roads, to paralyze Hong Kong's traffic and interfere Hong Kong's order, to threaten the SARG and the CPG. This is not a peaceful demonstration. No matter what the motives, what good motives the demonstrators have indeed broken the law. So as a law enforcement body, the police's duty is to restore order as soon as possible. That's why the police have no choice in handling illegal assemblies. Some demonstrators raise their hands, but at the same time they are charging the police cordon line. Some they verbally abused the police. So under such a circumstance, the police's handling has been good, and the police have been restrained. Mr. President, I want to reprimand the founders of the OCM. The society pays a high price for the OCM. Economic losses are created, and that brings a lot of inconvenience to people of Hong Kong. And the founders said that if it turns violent, it will cause stop. But then they now said that the people initiated the movement themselves, no way to stop it, and it's been out of control. It's very dangerous. And OCM is also going against the rule of law in Hong Kong, and many netizens and demonstrators said that they are putting up a fight for social justice and that the police should not enforce the law against them. But then some legal friends told me that they are worried. They commit crimes in the name of justice. They said that it will be destroying the rule of law. While he wrote an article, he said that it is said that the demonstrators, some people said that they feel oppressed, and so they can break the law because of that. Well, this stance is very dangerous, because
Everybody has his opinions on what is justice, and political issues should be resolved legal and political means, and they should not resolve political issues through illegal means. Or else, one day, if someone subjectively thinks that the ICAC customs or SFC are unjust, unfair, and made mistakes, and then they can resort to illegal means to charge against these departments. Now, under the law, everybody is equal. So because of political considerations, these charging people are not prosecuted. And that is, if they arrest those demonstrators, then that would not be fair to the demonstrators. So does it mean that whether it is legal or illegal depends on the number of people participating? So whether it is right or wrong is not subject to the individual opinions of the people. The court has the final say on this, or else the rule of law will be greatly damaged, undermined in Hong Kong. So everybody can interpret the rule of law, what is legal and what is not illegal. Well, the impact of breaking the law in the name of justice, well, that is going to undermine the rule of law. Now, that is obvious to everyone. So why don't we tell clearly the students and the protesters that this is so? And if you are trying to fight for the so-called democracy, not under the basic law, and is it right that you should just give up what we have built over the years, the rule of law that we have built over the years? Mr. President, many young people and students are still in the occupied areas. I would like to take this opportunity to say something to them. I have said this many times openly. The society as a whole has heard your views clearly, and your efforts will go down in history. So please, it's time that you go back home and return home immediately. Various leaders from various sectors, including the media and electoral members, for the sake of the students' safety, encourage them to leave the dangerous areas. Now, this is the most difficult time for Hong Kong. The society as a whole has the responsibility that we should not do something that we should regret tomorrow. I would like to, this is a letter written by a secondary school principal to students. This is an open letter circulated widely on the internet. Students, dear students, you asked the principal to state my stand. The Occupy Central participants think that their enemies is the police and the government. You have neglected those people whose lives have been affected. As a result, they will become your enemy one day. If you answer one question, then you'll get the answer. How many people, how many demonstrators are living in Mong Kok, Causeway Bay Central or Admiralty? And that is to say, you are not demonstrating at your own doorsteps, and you are bringing inconvenience to other people. And many people's income has been cut as a result of your act. Now, this kind of, I don't need your approval, but then I can demonstrate at your doorsteps, and you're not allowed to say anything about it, and you should pay the price. Now, this is the kind of thinking that is prevalent. Let me set an example. If you fight for democracy and you stage a demonstration in the playground of the school, then the neighbors in the vicinity won't oppose you, or they won't even appreciate you. But if you choose to stage a demonstration in Hong Shui around the railway station area, and then people have to make detours in crossing the roads, and then that is going to be an impact. If you resort to violence to resolve your issue, that doesn't have a market in Hong Kong in a civilized society. So if we support democracy, we don't necessarily support Occupy Central movement. I don't I never support a lose-lose tactic. You think that, well, another mistake in your thinking is that you think you represent the whole of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is deeply divided. Conflicts arise among members of the family, wives, husbands, and so on and so forth. This is so very clear. Now, if you try to adopt this kind of thinking that if you are not a friend, you are an enemy. So this is, if we go by this kind of thinking, I don't see any hope for democracy to be implemented in Hong Kong. We should have mutual understanding, mutual respect in democracy, and we shouldn't have a dictatorship. Lastly, riots are bound to arise. The adults know this very well, and it's a matter of timing. And they have it's just that they have different opinions on how grave the consequences can be. If the opponents of the OCM are fighting for their own interests, they will disperse automatically. Now, at the end of the Cultural Revolution, even Mao Zedong could not call a stop to the Red Guards. Ultimately, the military had to be mobilized to stop the movement. If you asked the Red Guards whether they had made a mistake, they would say that no. Then after the Cultural Revolution, then the answer would be different, and it's obvious. Politics is a difficult subject, and we want to protect secondary school students. Now, if Hong Kong is in its disorder, who is going to benefit most? If China is in disorder, who is going to benefit most? These are the questions that students should think about. As an education worker, my inherent duty is to protect students against any danger. I would try not to add oil to the fire, and this is what I must do. I hope that students, that you can review what you have learned and contemplate about what happened so that you can scale new heights in the future. If you want to do more for your society and the nation, you should have a selfless heart and a wide horizon, good analytical ability, and analytical thinking, humble learning attitude. Well, these have to be nurtured over time. More haste, less speed. I hope that you can come down and return home. And please keep in your heart what you have learned today. We should work hard, all of us, different sectors should work hard for democracy in Hong Kong. So I speak.
Mr. Leong Kwok-hung, thank you, Mr. Deputy. I am so moved by what Ms. Starry Lee said. If she is fully reflecting the public opinion of Hong Kong, and if she can propose to the NPCSC and the three-person team that there should be a 50% approval from the nominating committee before people can become a candidate. Well, if she had done all that, what we see today would not have come to pass. There is always a cost to anything. Say, if you tell the three-person team responsible constitutional development that you just continue to do what you're proposing, and that is you have to have 50% approval from the nominating committee before you stand as a candidate. This is so ugly. Who first mooted it? Is that a rational proposal? In what country do we see this? How come a minority of people will decide who the candidates are before people can vote on them? You say you are rational. What have you done? It is because you are irrational. You got Robert Chow to stage this show and thought that public opinion was on your side. Of course, public opinion is divided, but if you ask somebody like Robert Chow and distributed money, and then anyone could sign and say you had 1.2 million signatures, that public opinion was on your side, that you could fight against those 800,000 people who voted. Well, you are framing up other people. You are telling the central authorities a lie, right? Including Zhang Xiaoming. You're not telling the truth to the central authorities, and you were the cause of all this. Frankly, if you were not as outrageous as this, and that is the proposal, and you were telling people it's all right to pass it because public opinion is on our side. On the 1st of September, I demonstrated and said that the NPCSC did not represent me, that Hong Kong people needed genuine universal suffrage. Mr. Li Fei said that after supporting the resolution of the NPCSC, the administration and the pro-establishment camp would have to reflect the public opinion that supported the framework decided by the NPCSC. Between the 1st of September and the 28th of September, what did you do? Aren't you ashamed of yourselves? Li Fei said that, and then Zhang Dejiang wore a blue tie and said the same thing. Frankly, I wouldn't hold you accountable because I'm not the CCP. Or else, why are we facing this? And then the police, let me say this to you. It's really unimaginable. It's clear that they did not fairly enforce the law. Together with the Hong Kong Federation of Students and also Scholarism, we stormed the Civic Square. Maybe we broke the law. You surrounded us. You besieged us. You did not arrest us. You should have cleared out the site. But instead, you played games with people outside the gate. You used riot shields and also pepper spray. You tried to gather the crowd and then you cracked down on them. That was a strategy. You wanted to demonstrate police power. You thought that by demonstrating police power, nobody would join the Occupy Central movement. That was your strategy. And then when I was taken away, it was I was walking out from the east entrance of the government offices, and nobody surrounded us. I thought that the protesters were surrounding us, so we would not be able to go away. But then nobody was there at all. So you were just trying to demonstrate police power. Secondly, Zhou Shuo-wang and the two secretaries of Hong Kong Federation of Students, they were detained for almost 48 hours. You had wanted to do it beyond 48 hours, but you were stopped by the court. You took a warrant to search people's homes in order to intimidate those students and their families. Don't you think you would anger the public? It was not just about the launching of tear gas. Whoever was watching television would be angered, right? How come you could do it? The judge actually said a no to what you had done. And then you besieged us, and Benny Tai and Chen Kin Man, they were subjecting themselves to arrest, but then you did not clear the site. You just surrounded us. You wanted to wait us out, so to speak. And then other people came to give us solidarity, and then all police told 3 lies. Why? People asked whether we could go into the government offices, and then they said, yes, you could make a detour to the Hong Kong Art Center and another detour. And then you told people that they could come in, but then you asked them to take a detour, and then they had to spend about 3 hours to come into the government offices. So everybody was so irritated because you told lies. Crowd control is about dispersing the crowd, but you gathered the crowd. You did it wrong. Number 3. You abused your power. You launched 87 rounds of tear gas. And then you did nothing else. You did not clear out the protesters. You just fired the tear gas, and then you stopped there. And then in midway, somebody called you up to say, stop. Was it C.Y. Leong? Who did you hear? So you stopped the launching of tear gas before you cleared out the crowd. Was it Zhang Xiaoming? You also thought the action abortive, right? If what you set out to do was right, in other words, people were charging you and they were out of control, so you should have launched 870 rounds of tear gas and you should have beaten up the people with batons. But you did not do it. You also said people resorted to violence. Then you should arrest the people and then subject them to court and then show the public how violence was used. But then there was nothing of this sort. What we are seeing is that the police would arrest somebody and then there were some people on the lookout and other people would be beating up this person. Secretary for Security, please look at me. If protesters besieged a policeman and his weapon was taken away and 5 people would be kicking the policeman, 2 people would be on the lookout, wouldn't you just arrest those 7 protesters? Of course, they would be prosecuted for all the offenses. They would be resisting a police officer in arrest and also attacking a police officer. It is a grave crime because the policeman would have to keep law and order. Now, I'm not talking about all the policemen. I'm talking about those few. They would be wearing the uniform and then they subdue somebody and then they still beat up that somebody. Shouldn't they be penalized doubly? Some people are talking about we should have an offense of insulting the police, but then they were wearing a police uniform, making people think that they would be impartial and they represent the rule of law, but then they beat somebody up. Shouldn't they have been arrested there and then? Are they transferred out to PPRB or to cleaning the street? You say they have been transferred out. Come on, stand in other people's shoes. If you were the commander on site, if the protesters were beating up a policeman, they would have been arrested there and then, and there would be no bail offered to them. At the Civic Square, we just sat down. We did not do anything. Joshua Wong and Lester Shum and Alex Chow. I'm talking about the Alex Chow Wing Hong of Hong Kong. And yet they were detained for over 40 hours. And in the end, they were not arrested. They were just warned and released. Let me not talk about more examples of abuse of police power. Mr. Deputy, can I apply for 15 minutes more because I want to talk about the details of what is happening in this so-called Occupy area. Where can you see violence? Law and order is so good. People are just sleeping there on the streets. Where does the violence come from? Yes, there are conflicts. But does it mean that this is the advocated by our movement? Ms. Starry Lee said that in the end there would be conflicts. Well, yes, people have been pent up for 17 years, and I would appeal to youngsters not to fall into your trap and the trap of any other person. The strategy of this movement is peace. We will not use violence against anybody. Anything that may give rise to violence, and I would ask young people and adults not to be provoked. The setting up of barricades is for keeping the police again in our civil disobedience action. So at this stage, I don't think we should use our energy and suffer the risk of smearing by policemen or by manipulation by unknown people and give rise to any disturbance. I don't think we should be tempted to do that, and I will say this in public here. I hope everybody will remember the basis and principle of the Occupy Central movement. We don't want to overthrow the seat of government using violence. On the contrary, we are going to use peaceful means to reveal the violence of this system. I will make a public appeal here. I'm sure I will be scolded by many people, but I cannot do otherwise. I hope everybody will not initiate any road occupy action, because to the government and the police, they can use this as an excuse of crackdown. Mr. Deputy, the co-founders of the movement are not here. They cannot answer these questions, but I can do so on their behalf. This movement never said that we would avoid taking legal responsibility. We gladly accept legal responsibility. But If people smear us, sorry, we are going to give it back to you. Mr. Deputy, Ms. Starry Lee said, come on, students, show your conscience. I'd like to ask you, Ms. Starry Lee, you must be a CCP member. Mr. Lee Ta-chiu, a co-founder of the CCP, in 1926, or 1927, at the Russian consulate, he was expelled, and then he was against the warlords. And then he was asked, why did you support the warlords in Beijing? Because Beijing was my enclave. But Mr. Li Ta-chiu nevertheless supported the students, and he was killed. Should Li Ta-chiu be held responsible for the conflicts between the students and the warlords or police? The CCP staged a big strike in Zhangzhou. And then there was a CCP member called Si Yang. He was a lawyer. He saw that the leader of the strike was chopped by the warlords, asking him to take away the strike order, and that person did not budge. And then Mr. Si Yang wrote an article. It was quoted by the media of the entire world, and then he was shot 2 days afterwards. You say a student should not support people who objected to autocracy. You think that if they speak up, they should be subject to hanging or death by hanging. Mr. Deputy, the debate title today is the police handling of People's Assembly. On the 28th of September, in the name of the rule of law, that they are enforcing the public order ordinance, that they launched tear gas against protesters. They had the basis to do so. They were talking about rule by law in Hong Kong. And I can ask you, when tri-societies and blue ribbon wearers violently attacked other people in Mong Kok and Causeway Bay, why did they not enforce the law? Why they did not use the same strategy on the 28th of September to disperse the people? This goes to show that even if there is no collusion, there is prejudice. This is not rule of law. This is rule of man. One person ordered a group of people to attack or to deal with people who did not agree with him. And then when it was seen that some people beat up the democracy people, they selectively enforced the law or did not enforce the law at all. Mr. Deputy, there was no justice. I asked you yesterday, Mr. Secretary, you said that the police would enforce the law like before all the time. And I ask you, those 7 people, shouldn't they be arrested before they can continue to enforce the law? Or else there would be 70 more policemen learning by their example. If you do not take them away, they will continue to do this.
Dr. Kwok-hungChiang. Thank you, President. Mr. Leong. Mr. Leong Kwong, please be seated. Well, even if you speak loudly, that doesn't mean that you are right. President, Mr. Leong Kwong is yelling. He thinks that he is very right, very correct. It's a point of order. Speakers of mic. It's a point of order. All right. Please speak slowly, Chairman. I call for a quorum. Thank you. Ms. Zhang. Thank you, President. Mr. Leong Kwok-hung, well, what he said was really shocking. He said the government was in the wrong, the police was in the wrong, those who opposed Occupy Central were wrong, the pro-establishment camp was wrong, everyone was wrong, with the exception of Leong Kwok-hung himself. Now, with you, Leong Kwok-hung, in Hong Kong, and if you are our tomorrow, our future, then really, hallelujah, please do not scare Hong Kong people. President, yesterday when I left home, I met a cleaning worker cleaning the street. And as soon as she saw me, she said, Dr. Jiang, please ask the police to clear the occupied terrace. We've been waiting for a few months and I'm infuriated. I'm just an ordinary citizen. I really want to help the police to clear the sites. What she said could represent the idea of the majority of Hong Kong. Most of us cannot put up with it anymore. Not to mention our frontline police officers who are subject to the elements, they're at the forefront, being provoked by the protesters. Protesters can just sit there, and if they are tired, they can take a nap inside their tents. Can the police do the same? It's 20 days already, President. Members, policemen are also human. They are just human flesh. Even if physically they can still bear it, spiritually or mentally, they may not be held up any longer. Every day they are subject to foul language. The characters is smeared, and they have been they've got urine poured over them. Chairman, I saw on the TV screen in front of me, I can see young faces. Many of them are younger than the protesters. They are our young policemen. They are just young. They are not saints. They are ordinary human beings. These young people are our very outstanding younger generation. I know that to become a policeman, a person must be of integrity. He has to go through security vetting. He doesn't have to be handsome. He must be honest and upright and of integrity. And the mission of our police is to make Hong Kong one of the safest cities in the world. However, in the past few days, what we saw was unlawful acts happening again and again. Illegal occupation of streets, violent charging of our police lines, provoking them. Is the city still stable? Is the city still safe? Of course. The police have been very restrained. They have the goodwill that the protesters would leave peacefully. However, to date, what we can see is many students have left. But there are people, I don't know where they've come from, are still there. If the police do not take action to clear the occupied sites, then are you really conniving violence. Talk about violence. The opposition camp here has been saying that it is force and violence for the police to drive the protesters away with tear gas. Is it right or wrong to use tear gas? I dare not judge, but I remember this saying. Well, when the general is away, then he may not listen to the order from the king. The frontline police officers, the military on site knows best what's happening at the front, and then they will take action and deploy their officers according to their judgment. So for members who were not present that day, if you're not trained, how are you qualified to criticize the police? Do you know about their work? Yesterday, a certain man was arrested by the police, and the media showed that person who charged the police being kicked. And I was thinking, why should they kick him? And then, how come for almost 20 days, the police have never kicked somebody else? Why should they drag this person to a corner and kick him, assuming that what I saw was real? What was the reason behind it? Now, I know that the person who was kicked had poured a certain liquid over the police. And what liquid is it? Now, this is what I saw from the internet, is urine. Well, this is so base, so bad, so disgraceful. What kind of a person is he? Yesterday morning, it was finally revealed that he was someone from your civic party. So, these few days, students have left, and people who are there to stir up trouble, to provoke the police, are members of the civic party. Shameful, you're shameful and disgraceful. No wonder. President, yes, Mr. Raymond Chen, what is your question? I'd like to have a quorum call. Dr. An Chang. Thank you, President. Well, I was talking about the one arrested by the thug arrested by the police who charged the police. He is actually a member of the Civic Party. No wonder. As soon as LegCo resumes in this session, Mr. Alan Leong would continue to deal a blow to the morale of our police. So, day one, on the first day of this session, he has moved this motion to settle the scores with our police. Mr. Ho also doubted whether it was meant to trap somebody. The pro-democrats will only know how to add oil to fire. In this council, they dare to scold the police, but I've never seen them standing at the forefront to protect the protesters. Those protesters have been lying there for weeks, and how many of you have spent a night there? Some of you have never even spent a night there. How are you qualified to speak, to advocate for the protesters here? Why don't you go to Mongkok and spend a night there? No wonder many people say that those in the opposition camp can never succeed in anything. You do more harm than good. Some people would like to say that if this is to go on, Hong Kong will be doomed, all because of the opposition camp. Here I'd like to quote from the editorial of Oriental Daily. The last paragraph was meant to remind those legislators who are against China and to create turmoil here. In front of the tomb of Fei, there is this couplet: You package your charging activities into an act of justice. If Hong Kong people know your true face, you will be condemned in history. It's just like Qin Hui. He has been notorious for generations. Young people are passionate, they have ideals, it's natural. The pursuit for democracy is understandable. However, many young people obviously have been taught lots of ideas about democracy. I tried to meet with the leaders of scholarism, the conveners. Unfortunately, they've turned down my invitation. I'd like to say here that scholarism advocates civic nomination. Professor Kwok-hungChiang said separately on the radio and TV that civic nomination, this idea has been wrong right from the beginning. It should rather be called nomination by citizens. Civic nomination is something that polarizes our society. In Hong Kong, all permanent residents are entitled to vote. How is it that in future only citizens can vote and not permanent residents? Isn't it a move to divide our society? And this package by the police, by the administration, have you ever studied it carefully? Have you ever considered whether this package is good for Hong Kong or not? Perhaps it is another way out, an alternative, the third way, something different from what Western democracies are going for. You like to talk about international standards of elections. Do you know that many countries know that their electoral systems have gone wrong because they cannot have high economic development and good welfare together. They are trying to change, and yet we're going for something that they want to discard or have found problematic. I have a lot to say. Unfortunately, time is limited. President, I can only say here, lastly, that our police force has performed outstandingly all along, and in this matter, we can take pride in our police force. They are our pride. I hope that our policemen can understand, can remember the reason why, or the ambition in joining the police force is to make Hong Kong one of the safest and most stable cities in the world. And your duty is to maintain law and order and uphold the rule of law. Millions of Hong Kongers rely on you. We depend on you. So, I give you a big like. Thank you. Thank you, President.
Ms. Emily Lau, President. Yesterday, you said that some citizens said that we are behaving like primary students. And we try to convince people with reasons without having to shout, without having to resort to all these strident accusations. We hope that there would be a fair and impartial mechanism to deal with complaints against the police. We don't really need to use this platform to levy or level allegations at people. We don't expect this level of debate here in this council. If we want a council which commands respect from the members of the public, we have to respect ourselves to start with. President, today, this is the 19th day of this massive civic movement. During the debate, members from your party, Mr. President, are suggesting that we are in some sort of an anarchy. If this is the case, then it gives credence to what you said last year. You said that if we cannot get the constitutional reform sorted out, Hong Kong will become ungovernable. Many members, including those sitting across from me, should have heard that. The convener of the EXCO, Mr. W.K. Lam, said, like the President said, if we cannot get constitutional reform sorted out, Hong Kong will be plunged into disaster. So what we are witnessing today is not what we are talking about in the pan-democratic camp. The pro-establishment members did give us the warning ahead of time. Why didn't you heed that? Mrs. Carrie Lam said earlier that the whole mess was actually caused by the constitutional reform. I think it shows how incompetent the way it is handled. The pro-establishment members call this a political storm, and this is the term uttered by many of the pro-establishment members. Maybe this is the term uttered by Zhang Xiaoming. But they stopped short of calling this a colored revolution. I agree this cannot be colored revolution, although it is yellow in color, but it is not by any stretch of imagination a revolution. I haven't heard anybody suggesting that the administration should be overthrown in bloodshed, although we very much like to replace Leung Chen-ying. But this is not a revolution in any way. This is a peaceful, rational, and non-violent democracy movement supported by many, many people. Of course, a lot happened that were beyond our expectation, like the volleys and volleys of tear gas that were fired, that brought tens of thousands of people to the street, and that brought international media to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is under the glare of the international media. We're on the front page of a lot of magazines internationally. This is something that the SAR government didn't expect to happen. But things being what they are, how are we going to bring this to an end? See, Wai Leong had a press conference. Probably you can't hear that. He praised the police for clearing the roads. He talked about the constitutional reform, and come the fourth quarter there will be public consultation. He talked about having a dialogue with the students, and he enlisted the help of the vice chancellors. Now this is no solution, Mr. President. Dialogue is good. We've been encouraging the authorities to engage not just students but also everybody who are relevant, including electoral members, in dialogues. But nothing has been achieved. So the onus is with the administration if they want to handle this crisis. I remember not so long ago the 8 members, 4 from the pro-establishment and 4 from the Democratic camp. They are not happy why these 4 have to be appointed. There were 4, and you appointed a lot of people, and we was trying to sit down and talk about the issues and how we can find a way out of this impasse. I think this is something that many would like to see happen. The administration has to do something. Wai Leong came out and trotted out all this stuff. I don't think it would be of any help at all. So, President, the Democratic Party will be going to the UN. The Human Rights Committee will hold a meeting next Thursday. This is not a hearing on Hong Kong. That happened last year, but they will follow up on the recommendations. At that time, the Human Rights Committee recommended that Hong Kong SAR government implement equal and universal suffrage. In March this year, a paper was submitted to the committee. There would be a 5-month consultation. They said, when we fly to Geneva, we will tell the committee that at the end of August there was a decision taken by the NPCSC whereby there is a restrictive framework which denies Hong Kong people a genuine choice. I don't care who said it, Regina Ip or Anne Chung. Under this framework, even if you are a magician, you will not be able to come up with any system that doesn't come with any restriction that allows people genuine choice. So we're going to be visiting the UN and highlight this particular issue and draw their concerns. On Thursday, the Women's Committee, the CEDAW, will be holding a hearing. The Democratic Party will be visiting the UN to attend this hearing. This committee said many times that the electoral system in Hong Kong, in particular functional constituencies, are discriminatory against the women, and they call for this to be scrapped. Ms. Hon Alan Leong said yesterday that in this umbrella movement, a lot of women were groped, they were molested. The police saw that, but they stopped short of doing anything at all. So in Causeway Bay, pretty late into the night, there were women who were sexually harassed. Why is it that when women take part in this peaceful demonstration, they are given this kind of treatment, and the police don't really do anything to help? And this is really making us feel very disturbed. First, we will tell the UN that this is by no means a revolution. Hong Kong people were not starting a revolution. We're not seeking to have independence here in Hong Kong. I don't know how the central authorities got this erroneous message, and they're saying internationally that Hong Kong is starting a colored revolution. And this is a revolution that is orchestrated by foreign forces. Come up with evidence. Why did they have to trot out this lie? Why did they have to cast aspersion on this massive movement? They're saying that this is orchestrated and funded by foreign forces. If they have the evidence, please show us. If they don't, please shut up. Because this is really disturbing to the people of Hong Kong. So, President, many people said yesterday we had a long debate over Mr. Ken Tsang from the Civic Party. I hope that the administration will impartially and fairly deal with this case. Now, the 7 policemen have been moved out of their posts, but that doesn't go far enough. I think they should have been suspended for investigation so that we know that they're dealing with this in a reasonable way. If there are other allegations, they should handle them in a fair and just manner. We have to show people that our rule of law is really teetering on the brink, and those with power can get away with anything they like. There were hundreds or thousands of social workers gathering outside the police headquarters, filing a report, and I heard that there are more than 1,000 journalists who are staging a rally. When the reporters covered the news, they were also beaten up and they were charged by the police. And this is simply not on. I hope that the SAR government should understand that they keep saying that they are appreciative of the media and the support of press freedom. Why is it that so many irate reporters are taking to the street? They are covering the stories. They're doing their job. Why is it that they are given this kind of unpleasant treatment? They have to get on with their job every single day, and there are so many who are supportive of their work, Mr. President, because in absence of an independent media, how else are we going to get the information? So we are supportive. We are respecting the objective media. TVB has been dubbed as CCTVB, but yesterday a lot of the reporters published an open letter to indicate that they differ from the management, which disallowed the wording like kicked and punched. I was really taken aback. I've always been criticizing TVB, and I hope that the journalists would stand up for that. Now, people were really flabbergasted about what happened, and they were astounded that the reporters from TVB did come out, and I hope that they will not be taken to task later on. I hope that Mr. Yun Chi-wai will not do anything negative to them. There was a press conference in which some journalists are telling me that they're having a hard time. We hope that the journalists would be dedicated to their tasks. Many foreign media come to Hong Kong, and they witness how hard the reporters are working in Hong Kong. They pay tribute to them. I have to tell the administration that they cannot allow the policemen to treat the media or the reporters like this, because they're merely getting on with their job. Why is it they are subject to this kind of treatment? And the peaceful demonstrators, why do the police have to treat them like this? I fully appreciate that everyone is getting emotional. The police are really having a tough time, So the question is, or perhaps the business sector is saying that there are so many problems. The Democratic Party is aware of the problems. The traders, the daily life of the citizens are affected. We'd like to see this resolved as soon as possible. I think those who started it should figure out a solution. The authorities, the Beijing authorities should understand the impasse that we find ourselves in Hong Kong. I hope that the pro-establishment camp will tell Beijing that they should allow Hong Kong an election which is genuine. Is it going to be the end of the world? Why do you have to say time and again that nothing can be changed about the NPCSC decision? Yet this will be foisted down our throat. The people are making all these demands. They are not selfish demands. They are having the well-being of Hong Kong at heart. All these young kids are coming out and demanding universal suffrage. Why don't you heed the voices of this younger generation and bring us out of this impasse and bring us out of this crisis?
Dr. Joseph Lee, thank you, Mr. President, for this German debate. It is about how the Hong Kong administration and the police deal with the public assemblies. In the past few hours, different colleagues have talked about different issues, probably most of them focusing on the protests of the day before yesterday. It appears that we're trying to take the police to task. Let's take a look at what happened in the past 3 weeks and how the administration and the police cope with the situation. On the 22nd of September, class boycott was started, and there were assemblies at a number of spots. It was very peaceful. There were no large-scale clashes. At that time, we thought that the government was being tolerant, and the frontline police officers also knew that it was peaceful. No one would be using violence. On the 26th of September, the scholarism members stormed the civic square. There were confrontations. A few were arrested, and then there was confrontation. But still, there was consensus. At the time, the police officers were not perceived as abusing power, using violence to drive away the crowd, or resort to violence to assault, to arrest the protesters. And then later on, we got more and more supporters for the campaign. On the 28th, we found that people sitting in were very peaceful, but then they went to the road instead of confining themselves to the government headquarters or Tamar Park. This was exactly because they were prevented from coming over. Since there were too many participants, so they had no choice but go to the road. It was still peaceful. There were no clashes. At the time, the field commander asked for the OC form to be used, truncheons being used, tear gas being used. And that's the core of the issue. Now, the protesters were sitting in peacefully. Is it right to deploy such tactics? I read the news articles. Most of the articles criticized the use of excessive force. Tear gas was deployed, and then when participants talked to the police officers, we were told that 87 canisters were deployed. I don't know whether this statement is true or not, but it was said that at the end of the day, the last canisters were just sent up the sky instead of aiming at anybody. But I have to say that at the end of the day, it's unnecessary. The protesters are peaceful. Maybe you think that they are being unlawful in occupying the road, but then the force used was unnecessary. Well, on that day, tensions were very great. Emotions were running high. And then I spent a few days on the scene. I didn't go home. I spent time talking to the young people. They were in their 20s. They said that they were ready for tear gas. They were all very passionate. They didn't just come here to protest. In fact, we've forgotten. They've come here to ask for genuine universal suffrage. Their ultimate aim is not to occupy the area. So things would have died down. Now, between the 2nd and 13th of October, it was very quiet and peaceful. Then the police came to reclaim government property, and so there was some clearance. And then protesters were willing to give way. And then on the 1st and 2nd of October in Mongkok and in Causeway Bay, suspected riot members were seen coming to the protest areas to harass the participants, indecent assault, verbal abuse, and even physical assaults. So the policemen tried to be the middlemen instead of conciliators. The policemen were trying to separate the two groups. I won't comment on the suspicion that the police were colluding with the tribe members. But then the police tried to separate the two groups, and then that died down, and then the emotions were calmed down. And then there was this suggestion that we should try to see if we could restart a dialogue to find out more about universal suffrage instead of talking about strategies, tactics, how and where to occupy. I saw that during that period of time, the police handled the protests in this way. What have they done? The S4S said that the administration was fully behind the deployment of tear gas. But for a certain period of time, the police didn't do anything about it. Was it the administration's approach to let the campaign be phased out naturally? The frontline police officers were just walking around to patrol, and nothing much happened. If the police would just let the movement develop naturally, then is it the right time to comment on this? Well, I think we have to come back to the core issue. There is genuine universal suffrage. I think for the past 3 weeks, we've been asking for this. Every night, many people come to join the protesters to fight for universal suffrage, just blindly occupying a particular area. Of course, I won't rule out the possibility of some radicals trying to use this campaign to achieve their own agenda, but that's the minority. The majority of the protesters are peaceful. The government doesn't deal with the core issue and will just leave it to the police. And then came the 14th of October at Long Wall Road. I watched the TV. I found it very odd. The Queensway was released, and then Long Wall Road was blocked. I said to myself, there was bound to be a clash. And then there were physical scuffles, pulling off the face mask, spraying the pepper spray, etc. I won't comment on the details, but then I think this is what we probably have anticipated. What is worse is that the use of violence by police officers. Yesterday, I asked the S4S, but I didn't get the answer. You don't worry, don't need to worry. I'm not going to pursue the line here by holding you to task. As Ms. Lau has said, we just wonder why an arrested person was subject to punching and kicking. Is it the approach adopted by the police towards those who have been arrested for protesting? Now, is it that the senior management have given tacit agreement to the use of violence? Yes, some people have said that the police officers are getting emotional. Whether you have been provoked, whether you are professional, I think they are different. Yesterday, I received a message. He's a nurse. He asked me to read this out for him to deal with one's emotions. So I've been asked to relay the message. The nurse tells me that his wife was at the front line as a nurse during the SARS outbreak. Her life was threatened. She didn't take any day off. And then you know that in the year 2003, pay was cut. Working hours were exceedingly long. Every day they had to face issues like life and death. And then at home, she could not have much contact with family members. And even if she was able to get back to home, and many colleagues fell ill as a result of infection. But then his wife didn't lose her temper. She didn't quarrel with patients. She did not do any harm to the patients. And he said that that's what should be called professionalism. Now, everybody would have emotions. You can't use it as an excuse. When you're provoked, you show your professionalism by remaining unbiased. I think anybody putting on a police uniform must be able to do this. Today, there's an article in Mingpao. Let me sort of paraphrase what has been said in that article. It is said that the conditions of the police force should attract our attention and concern. Now, police officers have been subject to very vigorous training so that if necessary, violence or force can be used to maintain law and order. Now, according to Mingpao's article, the police force is supposed to have the fangs, and then if it is a time of peace, then they would hide them, and then in times of turmoil, they would show them. Now, does it mean that they are entitled to do so? Are they justified to take the law into their own hands? Yes, of course, everybody would say that it should be looked into further. Now, for the policemen at the front line, we have peaceful protesters in a demonstration. They are not able to cope with their emotions. Well, for the policemen at the front line, they've been insulted and they're subject to physical scuffles. But what about the senior management? For the past 2 weeks, I haven't seen anybody coming out. We don't see the CP, we don't see anybody at the commissioner's level coming out to address the police force. Are they acting like the CE, hiding away, too afraid to come to the LegCo to explain the matter? Some colleagues have said that the administration seemed to adopt this approach. That is, just like in ancient China, the generals who are fighting at the battlefront do not need to take the orders from the emperor. Well, but then we have got the CP, the Commissioner for Police, and other commissioner level senior police officers. They should come out to do justice to the police officers on duty. I think we shouldn't just leave it to the IPCC. I used to be with the IPCC. I was the vice chairman of the IPCC. Well, I am unhappy about some of the reports recently. I have been with the IPCC for 6 years. Under Section 81C of the relevant ordinance, there is this statutory power not just to investigate. We have also got a duty to prevent further problems. So it is a statutory function. The IPCC must have meetings with the police to make sure that we can take preventive action. So it is not that we haven't got anything that we can do. Now, many things have happened that we don't want to see happening. Like last night, pepper spray was used, and then physical scuffles took place. It appears that we got used to them. So let's talk more about what happened the night before. For the approach adopted by the administration towards the protesters, it seems that they just passed the responsibility to the frontline policemen. The senior police officers are nowhere to be seen. So what is important is that today the debate is about the approach taken to deal with the protesters. But ultimately the question is, how come that we've got so many protesters gathering here in the Admiralty, Mong Kok, Causeway Bay? What's the purpose of their gathering? Just one point. They just want to tell the administration what they want as genuine universal suffrage. The government's not going to answer their calls, and they will just try to wait out the movement. Well, for the SAR administration under Wai Leong, as well as the Beijing authority, I think they are duty-bound to reopen the dialogue so as to address our requests and look at the aspirations. Whether it is possible or not, I think the important thing is to start the dialogue. Otherwise, this will come to a very unhappy ending.
Mr. Stephen Ho.